So good morning. I hope you can see the screen. Can somebody confirm?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So we'll continue our discussion from yesterday, and we were discussing about the very basics of CFD, which we decided to discuss before jumping into the maths part, which is starting from the governing equations. And we are trying to understand what are the requirements of CFD, why is it important, what are the application areas, and what does CFD involve, means what we need to do for solving a problem using CFD instead of say using experimental setup or using analytical method. What is the way of approaching a CFD problem? From a layman's perspective, we are trying to understand. And we have gone through a couple of examples on why CFD is required, what is its advantage as compared to the other two methods. Other two methods are the experimental process and analytical solution. So we have seen that CFD is advantageous as compared to analytical solution because it is more versatile. We can deal with very complex problems. On the other hand, it is better than experimental methods in many areas where say for some reason you cannot perform the experiments properly due to different scale of the process, or because of hazardous nature of the process, or if the process is too complex to do in a laboratory environment. Also, it is more cost effective and computationally, means overall less time consuming as compared to experiments. Then we were discussing about the basic strategy or the basic say steps that are involved in solving a CFD problem, and we noted that the main or major steps are to consider a domain, CFD domain, divide it into subdomains, then consider a set of equations which we call as governing equations such as energy balance equation, then Navier-Stokes equation. Then convert those equations into simple equations. All this will be clear later on because we will go through each of these steps in much more details. But to get a layman's perspective, we are going through the overall strategy. So convert this equation into simple algebraic equation for each of these subdomain. Solve these simple algebraic equations with additional information from the boundary conditions, and then continue solving and analyzing the result, which is known as post-processing. And we had come up to this point where we were considering an example, a hypothetical example of filling a bottle with some liquid. Okay, so if we want to study this filling process using CFD, what are the steps involved? Again, like the previous slide, but for this particular case, if we want to consider what are the steps involved while filling the bottle with some liquid and trying to analyze that, we can consider these following steps. First, we need to develop a model for this actual physical problem. Developing a mathematical model means we have to try to take suitable governing equations by appropriately simplifying the equations. So for example, in this case, radiation may not be important. Okay, so we may ignore radiation. Even temperature evolution also may not be important depending on our problem. So if the liquid temperature is at a liquid enters at a constant temperature and there is no temperature change, then we will ignore even the energy equation. We will only solve the flow equations. So depending on the problem, we have to take the governing equations after suitable assumptions. Okay, so simplify the problem by making appropriate assumptions. So it can be like incompressible. In this case, it is 3D, but we can also take 2D problem. Then setting up a problem, mathematical model also involves setting up the domain. So for example, in this case, this is the domain. So we have to create the geometry for this, or we have to create it in another tool and bring it for our CFD solver. Okay. So basically we have to create the geometry for this. And geometry needs to be created either directly or it needs to be created based on certain, say, images which are already present for this structure. Okay, based on those images, we have to develop a CAD model. The geometry is known as the CAD model. For simple problems, we directly create the geometry using the CFD solver. Means it's like a 2D geometry in those cases. But for this type of more complicated geometries, you have to use a separate tool or the tool provided with the CFD software for creating the geometry. Then we need to divide this domain, it is not there in these points, into subdomains like this. This process is known as meshing, and each of these subdomains is known as a control volume, or sometimes they are loosely called as grids. Okay, but technically each of these subdomain is a control volume in CFD, and in FEM they are known as elements. But we are using a finite. We are going to use finite volume method, so there we will be calling them as control volumes. And each of this control volume is represented by a single point. That single point may be at its center or at the centroid of the control volume, and that point is known as grid point. Okay, so this is also sometimes called as grid generation, mesh generation or grid generation. This process of dividing the domain into number of subdomains, and this is one of the most important process because depending on the grid structure, the solution it means whether we get converse solution or not may depend on the grid structure. For example, here you can see that the grid is very nice. It is divided into very nice regular structure. So the solution of the problem will be much easier. Calculation of derivatives, etc., will be much easier for this case because the distance between one grid point, one center of one subdomain and the next subdomain is standardized in this case. If we have a very haphazard grid structure, like irregular triangles are present, then sometimes the solution is difficult. Well, sometimes we don't have any option other than to fit triangles or very haphazard grid structure because the geometry itself may be very complicated and you cannot fit a regular grid in that case. So anyway, so after meshing is done, then and after the governing equations have been developed, we need to provide the initial and boundary conditions again which are suitable for our problem depending on the user. So it is not that every time the initial and governing equations are very apparent. We might have to decide what should be the initial condition and boundary condition. We may take say heat flux condition here or constant temperature condition here, then flow velocity here, depending on our problem. So this problem is somewhat easy to take from the point of view of boundary conditions because all the boundaries are closed boundaries everywhere except this top. But in some situation, it is quite tricky to take the boundary condition. Okay, let me show another example. So, for example, this problem, flow over this Formula 1 car or flow over this aircraft. Okay, so in this case, taking the domain itself, taking the domain and boundary condition itself is difficult. In our example problem of bottle filling, the domain is very easy to take. The domain is the bottle itself. Okay, so there is no confusion there. The domain is the bottle itself and the domain boundaries are the bottle walls. But it is not always this easy to take the domain. For example, if we want to study the flow over this Formula 1 car, you have to take an external domain, right? You have to consider a larger domain because the flow is coming from somewhere and it gets affected because of the presence of the structure. And on the downstream side also, the flow is getting affected. So if I take a domain, for example, like this short domain, okay, like the picture or image that is shown here, what is the problem? Can anyone say if I take the domain like this short domain, like shown in this image? What will be the problem? So say I have a car like this or automobile or Formula 1 car and I take the domain around the Formula 1 car about with a length which is equal to twice the length of the car. Okay, so half in this direction, then the car length, then half in the other direction. This is our domain. Okay, you can imagine this in 3D. So half car length in the other direction. What will be the problem for this domain? Can we solve the problem with this domain? This will be clear later on when we discuss about boundary conditions after a few classes. But just I am trying to gauge whether uh, you are able to consider the difficulties for this type of problems or not. Can anyone answer? What will be the boundary condition on the inlet side?
So boundary
Velocity.
conditions like on like the phase in which the flow is entering, like at x is equal to 0, velocity will be given, and while exiting also velocity will be given. So these two can be the boundary conditions in this domain.
So, say let us consider a simpler case. This problem in 2D. Okay, the section is along the middle section like this. So what you are saying is true from the inlet side at x equal to like at some point at the upstream side where you take the boundary, the velocity is given. So it's constant velocity. How will the velocity be known? So typically, if you take this problem, even taking the domain itself is challenging because the better way to solve this problem is to assume that the domain is fixed with the car. So as if the domain itself is moving with the car. Okay, this will be clear in later discussion after few classes, but I am just telling it here because this question has arisen. Say the car is moving with 300 kilometer per hour speed in the front direction. Okay, I don't have a 2D image, but say assume that it is moving forward at 300 kilometer per hour. So we can assume that our domain is fixed with the car. So from that point of view of the domain, the car is fixed and the air is coming at 300 kilometer per hour towards the car, right? So now if you take the domain boundary to be too close to this car front wing, okay, or to the front section of the car, if you take the domain boundary too close, what will be the problem? So far away the air velocity is 300 kilometer per hour, means from the point of view of the car. But if you take it too close, you see that the flow velocity or the flow pattern gets modified because of the presence of the car structure, right? It gets modified. So our boundary condition is not suitable. Whatever we would have taken as 300 kilometer per hour air velocity, we cannot take it very near to the car because it is not correct. Okay, the velocity gets changed because of the flow around the car. More prominently towards the downstream side, if you take the boundary too close to the car, okay, then you will not be able to tell what is the exact boundary condition at that point. Okay, because the velocity pattern is very different from the far away velocity. If you take the boundary, say 50 times the distance of the car, very far away, okay, 50 times the distance of the car, then in that case the flow will have settled and the flow velocity will be again equal to. So what will happen if there is a car and 50 times the distance of the car at the back of it, the air will be equal to again at ambient condition. Okay. So similarly from this point of view, 50 times far away, the air velocity will be again 300 kilometer per hour. Okay, or other conditions like pressure will be equal to atmospheric pressure. So we have to take a very long domain for this problem to suitably tackle this problem. If you take a very short domain, then you will get incorrect result because you will not be able to tell what is the boundary condition. It's very difficult to tell what is the boundary condition at this point because the flow is getting changed. So you can see that even taking the domain itself is a challenge. Taking the domain and boundary condition itself is a challenge in many problems. It's not as easy as say this bottle filling problem. So again, like for problems, you might have similar problems in your say BTP project or other projects when you take your BTP projects later on or other projects. So flow over a cylinder. A lot of Dr. Bhumka students work on similar edges, flow over a cylinder. So in those cases, you have to take a long domain towards the downstream side because of generation of vortices. The flow pattern after a cylinder is strongly affected. And if you take a very short domain, you cannot capture the physics correctly. So in many cases, we have to take a very large domain or a very appropriate, like we have to take the domain very appropriately. It does not mean that we could not have taken a very short domain. We could have taken a very short domain, but we needed to know what is the exact boundary condition here. So if we could have gotten that boundary condition from say experimental results, then we could have used that boundary information from the experimental results and to taken a very short boundary. But that defeats the purpose of using CFD. If you are going to use experimental results to get this type of data, then it defeats the purpose of using CFD. Okay. So my entire point here uh, is to state that it is not always trivial or not always very simple to take the domain itself and the boundary conditions. In some cases like this bottle filling problem, the domain seems to be very simple to take, but in other cases it is quite complicated. Similarly for boundary conditions also, in many cases it is very difficult to take the appropriate boundary conditions. You have to suitably modify the problem to get proper boundary conditions. Later on during the course, after a few classes, we will have a proper discussion on boundary conditions, and then we will see lot of examples of different types of boundary conditions and how to suitably take boundary conditions. Okay. So anyway, so grid generation we have already discussed, and then convert this governing equation into a set of algebraic equation. So say if we are solving for momentum and energy equation, okay, continuity, momentum and energy. 5 equations are there in 3D. 1 continuity, 3 momentum equations for the 3 velocity components and 1 energy equation. Now for each of these subdomains or control volumes, the 5 equations will be valid, and we need to simplify those equations into a set of algebraic equation. Okay. Again, during the entire course we will learn how to do that. The main purpose of CFD is, or the main methods involve converting these governing equations, which are PDEs, partial differential equations, into algebraic equations. There are different methods to do that, and that will be like one of the major part of our course, to learn how to convert this partial differential equations into algebraic equations. But here we can just summarize that we will convert these governing equations into a set of algebraic equations for each control volume. Okay, so if there are 100 or 1000 divisions here, we will have for each control volume 5 algebraic equations. So 1000 into 5, 5000 algebraic equations will be present for the entire set. Okay, now we need to solve those equations together, and there are different methods for solving it. A crude method can be just to formulate the equations in terms of a matrix, like a coefficient matrix into some unknown matrix. Unknown means like unknown U or unknown V, unknown temperature, is equal to some known matrix, and then do matrix inversion. Again, we will have entire classes devoted to discuss on the solution algorithms during our course. We will have many classes to discuss our solution algorithms, and it will be clear. But ultimately, by solving this set of algebraic equations, so if we have 5000 equations, we will also have 5000 unknowns. Okay. So for each control volume, we will have 5 unknowns: the U, V, W velocity, pressure P, and temperature T. So 5000 unknowns, 5000 equations. We will solve these 5000 equations to get the 5000 unknowns. And finally, that provides us the solution. Now we have to do post processing to calculate other variables, like the temperature at each point. So from this we can calculate the heat flux using equation like minus K, heat flux equal to minus K dt dx. So dt will be temperature at one point minus temperature at other point, and dx will be the distance between 2 points. So like this we can calculate. Okay. Heat transfer, lift, drag, everything we can calculate. Shear stress, whatever is possible using post processing. So this is how we need to approach a problem and solve it in CFD. Any question? Let us consider another example. Okay. Again, similar problem, but now this is an external flow. This was an internal flow. This is an external flow. So, like I was saying, for the case of the flow over the car. So, you have a dinosaur. This is Tyrannosaurus. Okay, whatever it is. Just so say you have an animal like this, and we want to find out the flow pattern around it. What has happened? The flow pattern around it, and what is its drag coefficient? How much drag is generated? How much streamlined is this animal? Okay. So again, in this case, now taking the domain is quite difficult. Not as simple as the bottle filling problem, as I was saying. So you need to consider a very large domain. Otherwise, what will happen if you take a very close domain, close to the body, then the flow will get modified because of the presence of the dinosaur, and as a result, you cannot take proper boundary conditions because you will not know what is the velocity profile. Velocity may come smoothly along the z-axis. This is the z-axis, right? So the velocity may come smoothly along the z-axis. So it is the ambient velocity, so 10 meter per second or whatever, 5 meter per second. But very near to the animal, the velocity gets modified. So the z component may become 3 meter per second. Then there may be y component, x component. So, and we don't know this. These are unknown. These are part of the solution. This should be part of the solution. So as a result, we have to take the boundary far away. Similarly, on the downstream side, top side, we have to take the boundary far away. On the bottom, there is no option but to anyway, because there is the ground that itself acts as a physical boundary, and we will take the physical boundary as our boundary. And so again, another point that is apparent here, I have not explicitly said, but it was implicit in the discussion that sometimes the boundaries are physical boundaries like walls, okay, or inlet sections, inlet of a bottle or inlet of a cylinder. Sometimes the boundaries, domain boundaries, are not physical boundaries, but boundaries taken by us. Okay, so there is no physical boundary on the top or left or right side. Boundary, we are generating a boundary appropriately. And then we will take, so for this case, what are the equations we want to solve for the flow? So we will take the Navier-Stokes like x, y, and z momentum equation along with the continuity equation. And if we solve it, say if you solve it in 2D, you will get velocity pattern like this. If you solve in 3D, this is actually 3D, but 2D section is shown. You can see what is the flow pattern around this. Okay, the velocity vector should have been there. It is missing. I have just randomly taken this picture from Google, but you get the idea. Okay, so how does these velocity vectors are generated? These are based on the x, y, and z components of velocity. By plotting the x, y, and z components together, you get the, or in this plane, say if it is the xy plane, based on the x and y component, you can get the vector length and vector direction. Okay, this is the flow pattern, and again, this is missing. This is the pressure that is generated. The scale should have been there. It was missing in the diagram that I have taken. So you can see that some regions, so red region shows actually high pressure. So high pressure exists, and some region lower pressure exists. And this is how typically you have to solve the problem. So in this case, because the geometry was very complicated, it was fitted with a triangular mesh. The mesh structure actually is not shown here correctly. The mesh will be outside this dinosaur. This is the inner wall of the mesh. Okay, this is one of the inner boundaries, and this is the outer boundary, and the entire volume will be filled up with tetrahedral meshes, which are analogous to triangular meshes, but in 3D. So tetrahedral means four-cornered pyramids. Okay, tetrahedral meshes will be there. I think this is the velocity vector, and this is the pressure contour. Okay, this is the velocity magnitude contour. This is the pressure contour. So which shows the stagnation pressures in all this direction. And then by using post processing, Based on the data, whatever we need to calculate can be calculated. For example, for this case, the drag coefficient was needed to be calculated. So it can be calculated based on the drag force, which is again calculated based on the velocity components. And for this particular example, it came out as a very small drag coefficient 0.11, which is similar to a streamline car. Okay. For this case, this drag was very less because of the streamlined nature of the dinosaur. So because it is a very streamlined structure, it has a very streamlined body. The drag coefficient is interestingly very low. Okay. In other types of animals, it can be quite high. This just shows you again what are the steps and how to take the boundaries for a more complex situation. So once you get the results, okay, we should not just consider that we have finished the problem and we have the results. Like for example, these results. We should not consider that these are the final results. We should pause at that moment and think about the results, okay, and ask ourselves a few questions. So whether the results are correct or not. Again, in the previous class, we had discussed how to determine or how to get an idea whether the results are correct or not. So we should pause at this moment and we should think. We should examine the model again and the result and ask ourselves few questions. So the questions may not be the same questions like this. So for this particular case, we may ask ourselves whether the flow is turbulent or not. In other cases, we may have different questions. For example, for a thermal problem, we may ask ourselves whether radiation will be important or not, whether there are other effects. So for example, in some cases, magnetic effect may be important. In some cases, electrical effects may be important. So all those effects can be taken into CFD problems. In other cases, there may be a lot of heat generation due to viscosity. That may be very important. Then so many things are there. So we have to think and think about our assumptions, whether we have taken the assumptions correctly or not. Okay. So in these cases, we might have taken that the flow is laminar, steady flow. Okay. Then whether there are compressible effects or not. At high velocity, there will be compressible effects. At low velocity, there are no compressible effects. Then in many cases, we solve the problem as a 2D problem instead of 3D, because 3D problems are very time consuming. Okay. For example, the problems that we tackle when we are trying to solve in 2D itself, it sometimes takes even some cases take 1 month to run. A single problem may take 1 month of computer time to run. So you can imagine, and this is for say 1 lakh grid points. Okay. So or say 1 million grid points. So 1000 by 1000. So if it is a 3D problem, instead of 1000 by 1000 grid points, you will have 1000 into 1000 into 1000. So 1 billion grid points, and the time taken will be 1000 times more. So instead of, even if the problem in 2D takes 1 day, in 3D it will take 1000 days. And if it takes in 2D 1 month, it will take 1000 months, which is not feasible, obviously. So many times we have to convert the problem into 2D, although it may not capture the 3D effects fully. Then we have to think out whether 3D was fully essential or not. In case if it was fully essential, means it cannot be captured at all in 2D, then our results are anyway not good and the problem is not solvable using CFD at that length scale. If we can assure ourselves that no, it is okay, we have taken some assumptions, but the 3D effects can be neglected, then we can say that okay, then 2D is sufficient. For example, flow over a cylinder. Okay, I don't have a picture here, but flow over a cylinder, it can be taken in 2D because in the third direction, the flow variation is not much. So there are no issues in that case. But say this problem, there is lot of effect in the Z direction. So if I take the 2D cross section here, it is different. If I take the 2D cross section along the tires, it is different. So we cannot consider this problem in 2D appropriately. It won't be correct. Okay. Similarly for this case also, it won't be correct. But if you just consider the wing, then you can take a 2D structure, because the wing there is not much variation. So you can take an aerofoil cross section for the wing and solve using 2D. Okay, and that is how people solve this type of problems. To calculate what is the lift and drag that is generated by the wind, they take a 2D cross section and try to solve for different angles of attack. Angles of attack means the angle of flow with respect to the aerofoil structure, the direction of flow with respect to the aerofoil structure. So we have to examine and we have to consider whether this model is correct, whether the boundary conditions is correct or not. Then, as I was saying, is the computational domain large enough? So we have already seen that example. If you take a very small computational domain, sometimes it may not be appropriate. And based on the computational domain, again, you have to consider whether the boundary conditions are appropriate or not. Similarly, say you are taking a boundary condition where the values are not fixed. Say you are taking a heat flux condition, okay, or the pressure condition at the boundary. Then you will obtain temperature or velocity at the boundary as part of the solution. We need to examine whether this boundary temperature or boundary velocities are correct or not. Say I get a negative temperature at the boundary, which is meaningless. Okay, or the temperature is not matching with the outside temperature. There is a drastic jump. Then in those cases, we can consider that something unreasonable has happened. Okay. Then we also have to question whether the grid is appropriately generated or not. Means the mesh structure is correct or not. Can we improve the grid to improve the result? Okay. And there are different ways to improve the grid. For example, again, considering this case, some sections may be very important. Okay. The flow comes here and here there is rapid change in flow. Okay. In this direction, there is rapid change in flow. But far away in this region, there is not much change that occurs. Or for example, in this region, there is very little change that occurs. So we have to take a very fine grid, means lot of small control volumes near these regions, but we can take larger control volumes far away. Okay, we can take larger control volumes far away. And if we do this, this is known as grid refinement. We are defining the grid near the dinosaur. Okay, and we will get more accurate data. So our important data here is the coefficient of friction and the drag coefficient. So the shear stresses near this interface. So to do this, we need very fine grid structure here. Okay. Now you can ask that then I can take very fine grid structure for the entire domain. What is the difficulty in that? If I take a very fine grid structure everywhere, I will get anyway very good solution. Why will I have to take finer grid structure here and coarse grid structure far away?
Time taken will be more.
Yes, computational effort required will be more, but we will not get any additional information based on that additional computational effort. Whenever you are providing additional computational effort, you want some additional information. So here far away there is nothing, not much information to be gained, right? Far away the free stream velocity, this velocity will be equal to free stream velocity. So even if I take a very coarse grid, it should be fine. But using the same computational resource, in that case, I can define the grid structure here so that the solution runs within the same time. Okay, so we can get much more accurate results. So this is also true for heat flux situation. This is also true for calculation of heat flux near the boundary, problems like that. So for example, again, flow around a fin, heated fin. Okay, so very near to the fin, you should take a very fine grid structure so that you can appropriately calculate the heat flux near the fin. But far away from the fin, we can take a very coarse grid structure. It won't matter because there the heat flux calculation is not so important. So we can adapt the grid to improve the results. Please switch off your mic. Yes. Then another important thing to note here is that we can also, what is the time? We are running out of time. We also have to consider whether the solution is changing by changing the grid or not. Okay. So this is known as grid independent study. So say you have a certain grid for a simple problem I will again go back. Sorry, I will again go back to this problem. Bottle filling. So you may ask me that, sir, this looks like the grid size is quite large. Can we take even smaller volumes? So then we can take smaller volumes. So instead of 1000, we may have 4000 volumes or 8000 control volumes. So I will take half distance along each direction. So because it's a 3D problem, the number of control volumes will become 8 times. So approximately 8000 control volumes. Then if we consider the results, solution from that and solution from this, we should check whether there is significant difference or not. If there is not significant, there is no significant difference between the results, there is no point in taking 8000 control volumes, because our 1000 control volumes itself is giving good result, means equal results to the 8000 control volume case. So we will save time, 8 times the time, by using a coarser grid. Okay. So this type of study is known as grid independent study and gives us an idea about what will be the mesh structure that needs to be taken. Now you can say that, but how do we know that 1000 itself needs to be taken? I can even take, say, instead of 1100 only. That may also provide us with good result. So yes, so we have to do a grid independent study with multiple number of grid points. So say 100, 500, 1000, 2000, 5000, and then see from where the variation is very less. So if we see that at 100 grid points the variation is very large, but from 500 grid point onwards the variation becomes less, then we can consider that 500 grid points is suitable for us. Again, this will be clear later on when we discuss about grid generation.
Sir, can we generalize that one, sir? Like different bodies?
What means, what is the exact question? Can we generalize whether defining the mesh will improve the result? That is what you are saying?
Yes, sir. For different bodies.
Typically it will happen like that, but sometimes it may not happen. Typically what will happen is that, say anybody, say Formula One car was there, okay, or any automobile. If you take a very coarse mesh, I will give you, means very abrupt conditions, say only 10 grid points are there. Okay, so you can understand that it will not capture the physics very accurately if it has only 10 grid points. Now, if you increase the number of grid points to 100 grid points, we can imagine that at least it should be, or if the problem is set up correctly, at least it should capture the physics more correctly, because you now have more individual points in the domain. So if you keep on increasing the number of points, what will happen theoretically is that, if everything else is correct, if theoretically your solution, the discretized solution, will approach the, or the governing equation will approach the nature of the partial differential equations. So partial differential equations are differential in nature. It means that they are valid for infinitesimal volumes. Okay. So if you keep on decreasing the volume, your algebraic equations, the derivatives, like for example, you have a derivative dt dx. So this dt dx we are representing by some term like t1 minus t2 by x1 minus x2. So this derivative, this approximation will become more and more accurate if you keep on decreasing the size of the control volume. Ultimately, at infinitesimal size of the control volume, this approximation is exactly equal to the derivative, right? So dt dx will be equal to delta t by delta x if delta t and delta x are infinitesimal. So in general, yes, it is true that if you keep on decreasing the size of the control volume, means if you keep on increasing the number of grid points, your solution will become closer and closer to the correct solution. But it depends on whether the model and other things has been taken correctly or not. Now what will happen is that, depending on our situation, we cannot take, obviously we cannot take infinite number of grid points. So there is a limitation based on our computational resource. Our computer processor time is limited, as well as the memory or RAM is limited, right? So if you take a very large number of grid points, you will run out of memory. You cannot store all the data that needs to be stored and recalled. It depends on the RAM size, and processor will also take a lot of time for the calculation. So these calculations are processor dependent mainly. Okay. So we have to decide ourselves at which point we will stop, whether we are happy with 1% change or whether we are happy with 0.1% change or not. So if we see that with 10 grid points as compared to say 10,000 grid points, we are getting 10% change and we are not happy with that. But with 100 grid points as compared to 10,000 grid points, we are getting 1% change and we are happy with that. Then we will take just 100 grid points. But say somebody else for more improved results, say organization which has more computational capability, say NASA is working on a new rocket propulsion technology and they want to accurately capture the details. They may take instead of 100 control volumes, so for 100 control volumes we are getting 1% error, but they may consider that no, we will take even better, so we will take 5,000 control volumes so that the error is 0.01. Okay, so again these are all relative errors. You cannot say what is the exact error because you don't know the exact solution. Relative to the refined mesh, you are calculating the case. So one refined mesh study you have to do, but ultimately you have to decide which case is suitable and then run all the other cases at that length scale. Okay, but it's a very good question. In general, it should be the case depending on whether the model is set up correctly or not. In some cases, what will happen? Even with grid refinement, the solution will become worse and worse instead of improving. So this type of situation arises when you need to calculate some derivative or curvature. Say curvature is nothing but based on double derivative. So in those type of situations, if there is a sudden jump, then the derivative calculation becomes very difficult. So there is a sudden jump in temperature. Say we have a composite material, and one side we have a very high conductivity material like aluminium. On the other side, we have a low conductivity material like ceramic. Okay, aluminium ceramic composite. So there will be a sudden jump in temperature at the interface. And in those cases, if you take a very refined grid, you need to take refined grid. But if the grid is too small, there will be a sudden jump in the derivative calculation. So the derivative value will be very high. So if you take more and more refined grid, actually the solution can become worse and worse. So there are some situations, even in calculations of curvature or interface calculations, this type of situation arises. So you are solving for boiling heat transfer, for example, and the vapor bubble has density which is 1,000 times less than the liquid water. So at the interface of the vapor bubble, there's a 1,000 times jump in density from the vapor side to the liquid side. In those cases, very refined grid may actually cause some problem. Okay, so there are other techniques to resolve those cases, which is not part of the course, but I can explain later on. Right now, it will be too difficult to understand, too confusing. There are other techniques for considering those type of sharp jumps. Okay, we change that sudden jump into we divide it into a number of over a number of control volumes. So the density jump of 1 to 1,000 can be divided into small steps over a number of control volumes. Okay, this is known as spreading the or like basically we are softening the derivative. Okay, so anyway, it's a very important question. We are running late today. So where are these CFD problems used? So does this answer your question? Who was asking the question?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. Last here also I did not notice. When we go through the handwritten notes, then I will be able to notice the chat. In this case, because we are going through slides, I'm going in full screen mode. So some of the examples are where CFD is very much important and very widely used are aerospace industries. We have already discussed a lot about aerospace industries. So not only about the aerodynamics, but also combustion in the gas turbine. Very important. There are separate teams working on combustion, then CFD about the wing structure, CFD about the fuselage. Fuselage is the body structure. Okay. Then a lot of other things. Okay. CFD is very important. Then automobiles. So all the automobile companies have large CFD teams. Then there are different CFD teams among those. So some teams may be working on external aerodynamics, like we were saying, calculation of lift, drag. Okay. undercarriage aerodynamics, because it helps us to understand what will be the downforce. Okay, sometimes by modifying the undercarriage, we can generate lot of downforce. So the car almost sticks to the road. Then interior ventilation, like the air conditioning and ventilation, whether the air circulation interior in the interior is optimum or not. Then combustion in the engine, okay, how the combustion process occurs, what is the how the reaction process, how the flame propagation. So calculation of flame is also part of CFD. Flame is nothing but it's like a chemical reaction which is occurring very fast. So how the flame propagation occurs, then where to inject the fuel, at what point to put the spark in the from the spark plug, okay, how to inject the fuel, how many injectors at what location for what timing. So all this can be more optimized by using CFD study. Then cooling of engines, okay, then manufacturing of engine blocks itself also needs CFD study. So aerospace, automobiles, then power generation is another very important engineering area. Again, there are large various areas in power generation, like flow through a turbine, steam turbine or water turbine. Okay, flow through the turbine, flow around the turbine blades. Okay, then in the coal powered or fossil fuel powered thermal power plants, the flow in the burner, how the mixing occurs between the coal particles and air in the burner, flow around, large scale flow around the cooling towers. Okay, that is also very important because that dictates how the natural convection current is set up within the cooling tower. Then flow of the combustion products. Combustion products are known as flue gases. Okay, so flow of the combustion products. So all this can be calculated nowadays using CFD. Then flow in the cooling tower, within the cooling tower. All this can be calculated using CFD and are done using CFD. Very important. Then another major application nowadays are cooling applications. This has become very prominent because nowadays with increasing use of electronics, we need very good cooling technology. For example, all of us use laptops, right? So laptops have very cramped spaces, very small spaces are there. If you open a laptop from just remove its back panel, you will see that how the cooling is done. So within that limited space, there are heat pipes, 2-3 heat pipes, and there are couple of fans. Okay, if it is a gaming laptop or high-end laptop for simulation, you will see that more number of heat pipes are present and more fans are present and more vents are present. So how that fan draws the air and blows it out through the vents, that needs to be calculated using CFD. Then if the space is larger, you will have fin-like structure like this. For desktops, you will see that there are a lot of fins on the graphics card and on the processor. Okay, and on the fins there may be fans again. So depending on the situation. So these are again for heat dissipation, and how the flow occurs around the fins, that needs to be calculated correctly, and we can improve the processes cooling. So ultimately, remember that this nowadays the electronics is mainly governed or mainly the bottleneck is the cooling. Okay, and it will be more and more apparent in future. So as we are miniaturizing the size of the electronic components, we are going to smaller and smaller sizes. So more heat is generated per unit area. So now we have moved to say the AMD processors are based on 7 nanometer transistors, which is a very small size. Okay, so the number of transistors in a given volume is now very high. So it generates lot of heat for a given volume. Means the heat flux or heat density per unit area is very large. So you need more cooling technology or better cooling technology, some liquid cooling or say phase change material based cooling for these applications, and lot of research goes in this area. Similarly, for large scale data centers, then HVAC, any HVAC, like say for example, even for our buildings, although we go with empirical relations, but for if the budget is high and say the cooling requirement is very stringent, like for example a server plant, in those cases you have to do a CFD simulation. For normal structure like say for our school buildings, there may not be sufficient budget to do CFD simulations, and most probably they will go with empirical correlations, okay, because of lack of time and money for doing CFD simulations, and it is not also required fully. But for data centers where the cooling requirement is very stringent, you have to go with full scale CFD simulations. What is the time? So time is almost up. Okay, so we'll stop here. Okay, only few slides are left. We'll continue in the next class and start with the our course from the next week onward. Next week is Monday. Yes, so next week we'll have the class on Monday afternoon at 3:30 and start our course properly. Means the actual syllabus. These are just extra things that we are going through to get a feel about why CFD is important and why it is interesting, and to also show to you that lot of CFD research is going on nowadays, and in future CFD will become even more important in lot of applications. So these are some of the traditional applications, aerospace, automobile, power generation, but we will see that some of the newer applications like electronics cooling, then 3D printing, then biomedical applications. Nowadays, lot of CFD work is going on. Even our group is also working in those areas. Then some traditional areas like chemical reaction, marine technology, oil and gas. Then again, traditional areas, but previously CFD was not used, but nowadays CFD is being used very much, is like in athletics or in sports, okay, like swimming. So to obtain better techniques for more streamlined say movement, so a lot of CFD is being used. So we will see those, and I will show you some practical examples from our group, and we will then move on to the actual course. Any questions on today's material? From next day, I will take manual attendance. So is it clear what we are discussing?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. So then thank you, and we will meet on for the CFD class. We will meet on Monday 3:30, but we have a power plant engineering class tomorrow at 11 o'clock. So we'll meet again on tomorrow 11. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.